Hello everybody and welcome to another top 5 board gaming video. Today's topic is all about investigation games, but before I get started, if you haven't done so already, please take a look at all of my various social media pages as well as my Patreon page. On all of those, you'll be able to interact with myself and my channel in a whole bunch of really cool ways. So jumping right into today's topic of investigation games. These are games where you're going to be going in and you're going to be finding out information gradually. You're talking about logical deduction, you're talking about taking disparate pieces, trying to fit them together into a nice big puzzle. More often than not, these are going to be heavily cooperative games where different people might be getting different information, or you all might be getting the same information, and it's just a matter of using your different brains to interpret it differently. I absolutely adore these types of games because it speaks to me very much as a scientist and investigating and figuring out how things function. But as always, I'm very curious what you guys have to say. What do you consider investigatory games? Do you enjoy them? Do you not enjoy them? Please let me know any and all of your thoughts in the comments below. But with that, we're going to get started with my number 5. At number 5, I've got Betrayal at House on the Hill. Now, first off, this is lower on the list because it's not, strictly speaking, investigation. The idea of this game is that you're just sort of going around, exploring the big spooky mansion, and eventually something bad happens and somebody turns into the bad guy. It's still kind of fun because you don't really know what's around the next corner. You're not entirely certain how the scenario is going to play out, and so it makes for some unique replayability. But, like I said, it's really low on this list because as far as actual investigation is concerned, it definitely isn't quite there, but you do have the co-op mechanic, you do have the ability of going out and exploring and figuring things out. Betrayal at House on the Hill, my number 5. At number 4, I've got Alchemists. This is one of my favorite worker placement games, and I absolutely adore the humor that this game has. It's a lot of tongue-in-cheek about the academics in general and science as a field and all of that kind of stuff, so it really hits home for me, and I absolutely adore it. That said, the investigatory aspect of this is you're trying to figure out the symbols associated with specific alchemical ingredients. Every game, they're randomly assigned, and you essentially have to combine ingredients together and see what they make. Based off of the results of these experiments, then you can deduce what the individual symbols are. It's a lot of fun. It's a really wonderfully and well done game. The thing is that the investigatory aspect is a relatively small part. It is a key aspect to the game, but it is a worker placement, so there's a lot of other things going on. You've got a lot of resource management, you've got risk and reward, all of this kind of thing. It's a great game overall, but the investigatory aspect takes a little bit of a back seat, which is why it's lower on the list. But regardless, Alchemists, my number 4. At number 3, I've got Letters from Whitechapel. This is a wonderfully designed hidden movement game where one player is playing as Jack the Ripper and everybody else is playing as police officers trying to chase them down. The idea behind this is that you know where murder victims are and you know at least bits and pieces of Jack's movements, and the idea is that you're trying to trace him. You're trying to figure out, okay, where could he have gone? Which way could he have gone? He has specific abilities that allow him to jump like 2 nodes and that kind of thing. So it's really interesting in that sense, and just trying to deduce what are the possibilities that he could have done based off of the information that he's given. The reason that this is kind of midway on the list is for a couple of reasons. First and foremost is you really have to make sure everybody knows the rules. I've played through this game a couple of times where Jack didn't know what he was doing, the person playing is Jack, and it just sort of ruined the whole game. And the other major reason is because it's not as investigatory as some of the other ones. You're not getting those little bits and pieces of information and a story unfolding. It's not that type of game, which is not a big deal, but at the same time, it is primarily hidden movement, and that's really what you see in the forefront. But regardless, Letters from Whitechapel is my number 3. At number 2, I've got Time Stories. This is a great ongoing game that I have talked about quite a bit, where the idea is that you are playing as a group of time-traveling investigators trying to figure out what is going on with the timeline. Something is screwing it up somehow, and there's a big overarching plot that takes place across not only the base game, but many different expansions as well. The reason that this is only number 2 and not number 1 is simply because you do have that overarching aspect, and if you don't get a good group spook that you can meet with consistently, then it can break down very, very easily. But that said, I love the way that the information is presented. You've got cards that play out in a really wonderful way with incredibly fun design scenes, and most of the expansions are very, very well done, and they have their own unique mechanics associated with them, and it's always getting little bits and pieces of the puzzle every single time, and I absolutely adore the way that the game plays out in that sense. But the other major drawback on this particular one is that for every time you play it, in other words for the base, for each expansion, you essentially play through it multiple times before you, quote, solve it, and then you can sort of move on to the next thing after you figure out what's going on. So some people really don't like that. I personally really do. Time Story is my number 2. In a little bit of a twist today, I do have an honorable mention for you all in the form of Incómodos Invitados. This is a very fun Clue on steroids type game where the idea is that you're trying to solve a murder. Essentially, you had somebody get killed in the house, and it's up to you all as the investigators to figure out what happened by way of a scenario driven by a bunch of different cards. And so you read through the cards, which include witness statements, information from the police, information about the weapon that could have been used. You've got potential accomplices. You've got all sorts of different stuff. And the idea is that you need to figure out every single aspect of the murder, where the guy was, who did it, if there were accomplices, and potentially the path that they took, depending on the difficulty of the scenario that you picked. It is absolutely investigation at its best, and I really, really adore it. That said, it's only an honorable mention because unfortunately the Kickstarter for this game failed. If you're interested, you can take a look at my review and gameplay demo of it though. It was really, really fun to do. I'm so glad that I managed to snag a copy of it. But with that, Incómodos Invitados is my one honorable mention. At number 1, I've got Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective and its sister game, which is, I believe, Jack the Ripper and the West End Stories, or something along those lines, where essentially, how can you have an investigatory game video without talking about the world's greatest detective? Exactly, you can't. In this game, the idea is that it contains, I believe it's 10 cases, and with each case, you've got newspaper articles, you have a map of London that you're trying to follow, and you're essentially just going through clues. In general, it's just a murder case, and you're trying to figure out, okay, what exactly went on. With each case, you have information about specific areas of London where you go to a specific building and get some information about it, whether it's the crime scene, the mortuary, the police, or just random witnesses or interested parties, what have you. The thing I love about this game is that you have a very heavy cooperative element. Everybody around the table is trying to solve it simultaneously. You also have a wonderful, truly in-depth, logical, deductive reasoning style that you would expect from Sherlock Holmes style stories, and it has been tremendously fun every time I play it. The thing is that it suggests, like, I believe it's an hour to an hour and a half, and we always take like 2.5 or 3 hours, but we don't care because it is just so much fun, and we always have a blast at it, thinking about how does this work, what's the connection here, and trying to figure out those little things. But that is enough ranting and raving about this wonderful game. Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective is my number 1. Well, everybody, that's going to be it for me. I hope that you enjoyed this video of my top 5 favorite investigation-based board games. Now, one thing that I wanted to mention very quickly is that it's unfortunate, but most of these games really aren't going to be too family-friendly. It's something that I try to mention for at least most of the games that I talk about. And the biggest reason for that is most of them are dealing with murder. And the other thing is that most of them, because of the nature of the investigation and logical thinking and stuff like that, it really is not something that a lot of kids can grasp very well, especially because a lot of them involve writing down notes and things of that nature, and it can be really difficult, especially in the competitive ones like Alchemists. But that said, it is one of my favorite game categories, and honestly, I'm really sad that we don't have more of them that really bite and latch on to that investigatory aspect. That said, you guys know that I absolutely adore to hear from you, so please let me know any and all of your thoughts in the comments below. Do you enjoy this category? Do you not enjoy it? If you do, what are your favorite games? I would love to get some ideas for some new ones, but that said, thank you very, very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.